Hello, folks. I'm Joe Wesley of your Hot Seat Challenge Discovery to discover an ingredient of your secret sauce to build your business value even better. For those who are seeing us for the first time, thank you for coming. For those seeing us more than one time, hopefully multiple times by now, we thank you even more for continually coming back to us. Again, my name is Joseph Wesley, and today my guest is.
Davida Shensky. I'm a career and personal development strategy coach. And how I got into it
I,
was
I'm, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop a little bit. Part of what we do here is we want to be different from everybody else out there that's saying pretty much what they do, how they do. It's really who you are. And I begin by asking my guest, share with me your favorite pastime, because that goes to your passion. And once we get a better sense, a deeper sense of Davida, certainly for those who've not met her before, that we hope you will appreciate her or not for the unique value she brings to her industry. So for the latter part of this 30-minute session, we'll talk about her business. But for the first 15 to 20 minutes, we'll talk about Davida's pastime. And the method is, I don't expect her to give me a whole story, but certainly we'll start with, was there something you did as a young child that you really enjoyed doing that you may or may not still do? But if you had your druthers, you won the lottery, independently wealthy, whatever it may be, if you had to choose something or the ability to choose something you really like to spend time doing, what might that be for you?
well, I think as a child we always because I grew up in the deep south in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
It gets warm in April and it goes through pretty much October. So we were either at the beach or we were swimming at the pool. For the last 40 years, I've been exercising because I have cerebral palsy, which is a neuromuscular disability, and exercise is keeps me limber and keeps
Mm-hmm.
me mobile. And for a lot of reasons, when they did surgery on me, they were sending me for physical therapy, which was just moving blocks.
Okay.
Well, moving blocks is good, but I can't use my fingers. But if I can stretch and strengthen and improve balance, that's what's important to me.
I hear that. Now, I should let the audience know when I look down, I take notes because I have a mind like a sieve. And I have a blank piece of board or paper. It's not so blank now because I've made some notes already. So I can refer back to these points that I'm hearing as Davida is speaking. So it's not that I'm nodding off or anything. It's just that I'm taking notes. Uh, so if I understand you correctly, growing up in, I won't say the rural South, but growing up in an environment that wasn't big city density, that
No, it
you had.
was they claim 150,000 plus,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a city that celebrates St. Patty's Day, and they have it just swells to 500,000.
Right.
But and they have one of the biggest parades in the South, and there's pubs there, and it really it's one of the original 13 colonies.
Mm-hmm.
So and this town themselves never really look to bring industry in or grow, and they really depend on tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I'm going to say about that, there is one place downtown that used to be my great grandparents owned the general store,
Mm-hmm.
and it's now known as the Crystal Beer Parlor.
Right.
And when we were there, they had a menu, and on the menu were pictures of my aunts and uncles,
Nice.
not the owners,
Very
because they
nice.
were the original owners. So they put it in as the original for who the original owners were.
That's very nice. So if I understand correctly, first off, at what age did your cerebral palsy became a clear issue? For me, for people who don't know the disorder, I have a medical background. It's an environment where you can't use your muscles as well as you'd like to use them. Is that a simplistic way of saying that?
Well, I've had it since birth.
Oh, since birth. Okay. So that's an issue.
Yeah, so it is an issue. I mean, like right now, I'm wearing a brace on my hand to support it because, and it keeps it stretched. So because otherwise it gets very contracted.
I understand. So I'm not going to go into your medical history strongly, but it's a true disability, and I don't know if there are any disabilities that are not true, but certainly a significant disability of function of getting around. And I don't normally connect dots so quickly, but I do want the audience to understand. I suspect it's part of your journey in terms of who you are and why you are, that having this disorder since birth has been significant, that physically it's difficult for you to maneuver like healthier people would maneuver, and you've had to adjust your life to
Yeah.
that. Or
But you
rephrase
can
that.
remember when I entered school, you did not have the Individual Disability Education Act. So people
Okay,
with disabilities were not guaranteed the right to an education.
right.
And I just happened to have been the only person in the school with a disability. And back then, it was like they feared you because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know how you get it. And it
And
was like,
you were different, and they were going to
yeah,
tease you because you were different. And
very much
because
so.
and some people, with my background awareness, some people are scared because you're different. They will avoid you besides teasing you because you're different. So you say the only student in school that had a disability, and things weren't set up. Everything had likely stairs at some point, and you had to maneuver your way up or be maneuvered up. So I suspect you went through quite a bit of your lifestyle, not having a silver spoon in your hand in a figurative manner. So I'm going to fast forward it if I can. With your disabilities, you talked about exercising. Was that something that, since there was no act in place, there was no programs already in place, how did you get started in that path of exercising to maximize the functionability of your body?
Well, in the 1980s was the beginning of seeing all those health clubs come up.
Okay,
And I'm always someone that's active, but I knew I needed to do more than just walk. Walking's a good exercise, but it doesn't. And but it, I also know that I had surgery at 14, and
okay,
for 2 years, I had to use a walk on a brace in the old iron braces. And then after 2 years, 2 years after the surgery, the doctor said, the orthopedist said, I didn't have to wear it anymore,
you're
but
right.
sleep in it. But I also knew that I had to begin to stretch the tendons and the muscles to be able to get more mobile, to
Right.
build strength.
And was
And
that something you did on your learn on self-learning, or was it something
I
that you,
pretty much figured that out myself. There was no one around to tell me what to do, or what I should do or I shouldn't do. But I just knew for myself that it
Mhm,
was important for me.
right?
So I kind of became my self motivated person to do it.
I get that. And have you developed other techniques? What types of techniques you say you had to walk? You developed, like, I'm assuming lifting items and pushing items as part of keeping your body
Well,
go.
I
Go
have,
ahead.
I really have no use over my right side whatsoever.
Okay.
I don't have the dexterity, I don't have the strength, but the idea is to keep it stretched, to keep it mobile so that I mean, you can see even when I'm sitting here, I don't look like I'm even at times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because one side is stronger than the other.
Okay. I have to say this. I don't have to say it, but I'm going to willingly say it. I've done this for a little bit of time. You show more animation than many of my guests have shown, so my hat off to you in that direction. But what I'm getting the sense is that you've been self-motivated because not because you had to be, because you chose to be. Is that a reasonable
Well,
concept?
that and the fact that my personality, and this goes back to assessment profiles,
Okay,
is that I'm a very high D and I, with the I having good interpersonal skills and always looking to interact with people. And that, I think, is why I was able to overcome a lot of the negatives.
right.
of what was going on in society at the time. Because the idea was if you told me I couldn't do anything, and that was like putting a red flag in front of me and daring me to prove you wrong.
I hear that. So if I hear correctly, the negatives became stimulants for you or
Yeah,
catalysts for you.
very much so.
Again, I'm a slow writer, folks. I apologize if I spend half my face buried down on paper. Now, I hear that, and do you consider it a favorite pastime? Do you consider it a chore? Do you consider it an obligation? Do you consider it a quest? I'm not quite clear your emphasis of what we've just talked about. Or all of the above, any of the above, none of the above. How would you describe what I've said?
Well, for me, it's that independence was in being independent and taking care of myself and knowing that I had a life outside. And I think that was my motivator to because I grew up in a home that was very negative, a father that physically abused, a mother that was verbally, mentally, and emotionally abusive. And the
Right.
sad part was those are the homes they came from. And if back then you didn't have the laws in the books that protected children, and it was like, oh, if that child's being hit, it's because they're doing bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And today, people, there's more information out there and there's more talk. It's for the same reason that I never got married because I knew it would be very easy for me to end up in an abusive relationship
Mm-hmm.
because that was my comfort zone coming from the home I came from. And yet I've known some people that stayed in long term relationships in abusive homes because that's all they knew. And then they had children, and it was, and finally, after many years, did they finally decide it was not the right thing for them. And
Right.
one person I know married someone simply because he he wanted her,
Mm-hmm.
and because she grew up in a home where she felt she was unwanted, and even though people who knew him knew it was not going to be a good situation for her,
Mm-hmm.
she went through with it, even though they said we will say we're the ones that's stopping it.
Right. I understand that. And that tends to be how that works. I hear you loud and clear. This is interesting on many different levels. And let me share with you what I'm doing. When I talked to our group initially, I said that about of the 30-minute session, 20 minutes plus or minus of making notes, and then we flow into what you do as a business. Having said that, it's only been about only simply just 13 minutes plus or minus. I already have a full sheet of notes that I've taken. So I'm going to have to stop asking you questions and not start flowing into your business side. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a brief summary and I'll come back to it a little bit later. But if I understand your pastime, it was by necessity and based on determination. When I rephrase that, when I think of your favorite pastime, I think many people may share this. We say, well, I enjoy fishing, I enjoy sunbathing, I enjoy reading books, whatever it may be. I think your enjoyment, I would say almost secondary. For you, it's a necessity to not simply exist in your life, but to move forward in your life. And I suspect you enjoy your accomplishments and your results of it, but I would think it'd be a lot of drudgery to get to that point. Am I far off on what I've just said?
Well, and there's one thing that I want to say. When the Olympics came to Atlanta and the
Yes.
Atlanta IOC
Mm-hmm.
bid for the Olympics, they refused to bid for the Paralympics because at that time, between 1960 and 1996, they were bid for separately, and it was the
Mm.
disability community that got together and bid to bring the Paralympics to Atlanta. And
Okay.
then that Samaranch, who was the head of the IOC at the time, went and changed the bylaws so that after 1996, any country bidding for one was automatically bidding for both and
Hmm.
had to prepare for both.
Interesting. And I hear the concept there and the determination, the conditions, the struggle to make it happen. I get that. Let me do this. Let me flow into what got you in the path of your current business. Without going into the details of what you do, the value of it, could you describe what you do? And then having said that, share us what got you on this path. Rephrase that. Was it like you woke up one day zapped by lightning and says, I'm going to do what I'm doing now? Or was it you throwing darts at a screen? Or how did that work out for you?
When I entered the workforce
Mm-hmm.
and I lost my job with the state, I couldn't find anything else to do.
Right.
And I knew I had certain skills because I had a background in psychology, a background in mental health.
Right.
And I wanted to do, initially, I had training in psychodrama and transactional analysis
Mm-hmm.
and running groups. But because I don't have the PhD, the hospitals would not allow me to come in and do the group therapy sessions. And then I became a distributor, which at the time was known as Performax,
Mm-hmm.
which were the assessment profiles for listening, for values analysis, for uh, communication and learning. And then I also joined a company perform what is Personal Dynamics, and they merged and were bought out
So
by.
can I ask you a question? To be frank, who bought them, I don't care. So I'm going to ask this a little
Yeah,
bit
well,
differently. The
I didn't
path
want to get into that, but what happened was that as I was doing, I used that as a way to do, because you remember 40 years ago, before you had the internet,
mm-hmm.
you had to contact the corporations, you had to go in and do the train the trainer sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and then sell them the
Mm-hmm.
profiles for them to come to you and repurchase the products on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And then as technology took over, all I did was move everything online and started creating my own programs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what I do, because a lot of people who become entrepreneurs don't have the skills or knowledge of how to start their own business or how to grow a business or the importance of having a business plan as a guide for your business.
I hear that. So if I understand correctly, that it was a combination of things happened to you. The job you had was no longer a job available for you, and I'm what I'm hearing. I think is you searched around for different paths. You've gotten your. I think you said 2 degrees. You have 2 college degrees.
Yeah, I have an associate's in mental health and a bachelor's in psychology.
Okay, and I can understand the value of that, and correct me where I might be wrong, that you talk about in abusive relationships that you grew up in. You talked about the fact that you deliberately did not get married because you felt you might be at risk for falling into that same pattern of continued behavior setting. So I can see the mental health degree to discover, I'm assuming, more about yourself and the world around you. So I would say it's a coping slash learning mechanism, if nothing else. And from what you've said about your story so far, and I'm going to look at my notes now, that you talk about being independent. It's very important to you. And if
Mhm.
nothing else, you're not allowing yourself to fall victim or to be victimized by your surroundings, by your circumstance. Is that
Yeah,
kind of a,
and two programs that I'm focusing on now is one of them is family boundaries
mm-hmm,
and improving relationships within the family. I
right?
have an ebook on it. I have an e-learning course. I've got a master class, and then I've got four different challenges: one, a 7 day, a 14 day, a 21 day, or a 30 day. In that, you choose which one you want to go to, how
I,
intense you want to
I
get
hear you.
into
I'm
it.
going to do a slight commercial break now. Now, you make a good point that, folks, this is a scheduled regular recording, your hot seat challenge for enhanced business success. post it on the YouTube version, and you can pick it up on the other links, if not YouTube directly. That there'll be a description of Davida, a description of myself. There'll be links to her given programs. And if you want to reach out to her, we encourage that. We encourage your comments. We do audit the platform and we'll get back to you. Good, bad, and I won't say indifferent, good or bad. Indifferent means nothing to me. And we do make it a point to respond back to you. If you want to learn more about Davida and her skills and what she can offer you, please get in contact with her. If you'd like to have a hint of your secret sauce ingredient, please reach out to me. Meanwhile, subscribe and share us with your friends, your associates. That's our commercial break. So back to the story, kind of like a TV environment. And I do that deliberately so we don't have to spend much time talking about what she does. I'm curious about the value of what you do in terms of what you bring to the table. So if I understand correctly, you offer programs for people who want to better their life, to get out of the rut. What's the purpose of your business for your market?
Well, my purpose is this, that to teach people to have self confidence in
Mm-hmm.
themselves and to rise above limiting beliefs and adversity and achieve what they were meant to achieve. And because most of the time, what happens is we tend to allow other people's treatment of us and their negativity infiltrate our mind,
Mm-hmm.
and then that becomes a habit where we're telling ourselves what they have said, and then we live out that prophecy.
I hear that.
So that's why because a lot of people don't know how to start their own business or how to build a business online, I focus on that. But because my area is counseling and mental health, I also focus on the personal development side of working with people to help them to have goals
Mm-hmm.
and achieve beyond what they should. And I guess a tagline I should say is unlock your potential and defy the odds.
Interesting. I like that. And I'm going to go back and digress a little bit more about who you are as part of my connect the dots. I tell people I see things and I connect the dots very well. And I just wrote down when you talked about rising above their limits. Clearly, I'm going to say two concepts. Coaches can teach people skills. I think you also work on their attitude, if I'm hearing you correctly, that one can develop skills, but if you don't know how, you don't have the proper attitude or an enhanced attitude to take advantage of those skills and put them to maximal use, then you're cheating yourself. That's what I'm hearing. And when I go back to the fact that anybody in your industry, from my perspective, can say what you've said. Well, I'm here to teach you how to be a better business person. I'm here to make you more functional. I help you to create a success for yourself. But when I'm hearing your story, you've kind of walked your talk that you were born at a disadvantage, not just physically, but also emotionally, if I've heard correctly for you.
Yeah,
So one can develop the skill of walking or not based on Mother Nature, but it's the attitude behind that effort that I think has made you. It didn't make you. You made yourself who you are. I'll say it like that. And so we talk about the fact that there was no Disability Act back in those days. You were the only student in your school to have disabilities and go to school. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess. You could have chosen too much aggravation. Why bother? We didn't have, I'm assuming you didn't have push walks or slope walks. You had to go up the 13,000 stairs to get from point A to point two to point B. Don't let the school have two levels of education courses. Now you have to go up and down stairs there. You had, to put it mildly, a lot of limitations. And whatever care there may have been was still very rudimentary. So you went beyond the moment on your education. You went beyond the moment on your physical issues that you had to deal with. You went beyond your moment on attitude that many people would have allowed these circumstances to allow them to be victimized and get lost in the statistical part of our culture, that you've risen above that. And it wasn't enough just to be as good as, you had to be better than, and you're turning it back around. So the point I'm making here from my perspective, and I'm going to ask for your feedback on this, is that anybody can say what you do, but you've walked your talk. You are an example of somebody that had multiple challenges. And I suspect you know way more than I do. People will say, I don't think there's any future for me. I don't see where I could make the effort. Well, that would be to me the attitude part of their lifestyle. And I think you're certainly prepared to address that. And then the skill comes along. Well, what would you do beyond that? And you've recognized because of your limitations, you've super maxed out your strength factor. And I don't mean to ramble because it's here about interviewing you and not interviewing me, but am I far off in what I'm saying here in terms of your focus and your efforts?
I believe so. And I guess the best example of that is I have a sister that was born deaf,
Yes.
and her personality is to be a steadiness personality,
Mm-hmm.
where she's the peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And she, because she so desperately wanted them to love her, and she couldn't understand that my parents came from a home where they would not show love, so they didn't know how to show love. And so that when they were telling her, you're worthless, you're helpless, you can't live on your own, you can't think, she bought into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my mother passed away 12 years ago, she's now a lost soul that doesn't know what to do. You literally have to tell her to get up, to take a bath, to wash herself, to brush her teeth. If there's no one there to tell her to do it, she won't do it.
Mm-hmm. And that could be typical for a lot of people in life. I'm assuming that they don't involve themselves well enough, they don't believe in themselves well enough to become a part of the environment and even to improve themselves with it, despite it. And I think you've chosen the alternate path, if I'm hearing you correctly on that. Uh, this is, I have to say, an intriguing, most of my guests are intriguing in story and history while they are, but I think yours is an exceptional journey that one can look at you. To say this differently, a business owner will say, first off, I don't have a marketing budget. I'm trying to keep up to paying the bills and keeping the household together. And people won't spend the money because they're afraid they'll misspend it. They won't get best value for it. But what I'm hearing here, and by the way, we don't pre-rehearse this. I think this is our first direct contact, Davida, since we made electronic connection here. So there's no prior bias or history that hasn't been thought out, talked out. But having said that, what I'm hearing is for a consumer, a possible business owner, or even if you're not going into business, coping, and not just coping, to move beyond the coping and to become a participant to your terms of sorts. I would say Davida will be a go-to person because she's had a lifestyle of walking her talk. She's had the direct experience on the physical side, the emotional side. She shows a sibling that got caught up in the web, and Davida has walked beyond that, and not just to get by, but again to be independent, self-functional, to contribute. She turns it on the dime and says, "I'm going to give back to people in terms of the value I can bring to the table." How am I on that? Good, bad, or indifferent in terms of reflecting your philosophy?
And I remember as a young child thinking, why me? Why me? And I
Mm-hmm.
came up with the idea, my life has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way I've lived my life, and why I'm doing what I do now, and why I have such a passion for it, because no one should live a life dependent on what other people tell them on how they should live it. Because if you remember, prior to 1960, society didn't even recognize its disability community, and the term was handicap.
Mm-hmm.
And the term handicap comes from the very early part of the 20th century, when people stand on street corners with their cap in hand
Mm-hmm.
asking for money.
Mm-hmm.
And most people with disabilities today want to work and contribute to society.
I'm hearing you, and I'm saying I would suggest the audience that rephrase that. We're talking primarily physical disability, but I think Davida's also touched on emotional disability. So I think one can have a perfect physical component, but still feel limited because of circumstances. And I suspect Davida would be the type of person you would want to go to for further interaction, for further improvement. She has a litany of resource material shown in the description section of this presentation. Again, I'm going to ask that you subscribe, keep in touch. Please share your comments with ourselves and each other. Again, thank you for your time, Davida. I enjoy having had you as a guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the last thing I want to say is that my podcast is called Live Without Limits, Reach Personal Success on a Daily Basis.
Okay, and if I'm good about transcribing, that too should be in the description. If not, I'll correct on that. Thank you for showing that and sharing that also. I appreciate it. Hey, business is business, folks. I get that.